Hi, everyone, and welcome to Mastering Cybersecurity Recovery, Best Practices and Solutions in the new NIST CSF 2.0 framework. Today's webinar is sponsored by Pure Storage and produced by Actual Tech Media. My name is Keith Ward. I'm with Actual Tech Media, and I'm really excited to be your moderator for today's special event. Before we get to that content, however, I do need to cover some housekeeping stuff. Okay, first up, we do want this to be an informative event for you, so we encourage any questions in the questions box in your webinar control panel. It's in the same place there near where so many of you were saying hello. Right next to that questions tab, you will see the handouts tab. Now that Q&A panel is also the place to let us know about any technical issues that you might be experiencing. If that happens to you, give your browser a quick refresh or two and see if that takes care of the problem. If that doesn't, let us know and we will hop right on it. Next up, take a look at that handout section, which I referenced before, because there is a lot of important stuff there, including two great handouts from Pure Storage. One is a PDF on how to boost your data resilience, and the other is an infographic on securing your data. Get those now. They are free. So in the handouts section, you'll also find a link to the Actual Tech Media Decisions Group, which is a panel of IT decision makers that you can apply to join. If you do that, you'll get to participate in some more in-depth events and other opportunities not available to mere mortals. In there, you'll also find a link to the ATM Events Center, which has our calendar of upcoming events, just like this one. Okay, third, at the end of this event today, we will be awarding a $250 Amazon gift card to one of you. Now, you do have to be in attendance during the entire live event to qualify for the prize. The official terms and conditions of that drawing can be found in the handout section if you are so inclined. And with that, folks, why don't we get to the main event today? It is my pleasure to introduce you to our presenter, Jason Walker, the Global Practice Leader for MDP and Security. Now, I've worked with Jason before, and he is a lot of fun to work with and to listen to. Jason is ready to go. He has the mic, so I am going to put him on stage. Jason, take it away.
Keith. Hello, everyone, and thanks for joining Mastering Cybersecurity Recovery, Best Practices and Solutions in the new NIST 2.0 framework. I'm Jason Walker. I'm the Global Practice Leader for Cyber Resiliency at Pure Storage, and we're going to dig in a little bit to the what's new in NIST 2.0 with a specific focus on recovery today. And, recovery is now spans a lot of pillars in there, and a notable emphasis on verifying backup integrity. So we'll dig into that with an angle on restore. But first, I am Jason Walker, and been with Pure Storage since 2019. Been in data protection and resiliency for probably longer than I should admit to. But we've seen a lot over these 25, 30 years of looking at resiliency, looking at recovery, and increasing importance. But first, what is NIST? It's the NIST framework that's been around for a while, with the 5 pillars of, identifying and protect, detect, respond, and recover. Each of those pillars have been very important in identifying and the kind of data that you have, et cetera. And like I said, we'll dig into some of the recovery today. You're looking at, backup and recovery with the recover, the respond with SOAR and SIM-SOAR, and the detect and respond and data classification around identify. And as we begin to chase this kind of stuff, you can really go in a lot of directions really quickly and get too detailed too quickly. So we're going to talk through some of the things about simplifying that as we focus on recovery. But now there's that was the original framework. Now we have a 2.0 framework, which now involves something that we've talked about at Pure Storage for quite a while. That while you had all those different pillars in the NIST framework, there was a need to have some programmatic governing around all that. How do you plan? how do you govern? How do you, assess what you're doing and plan for each of those things? And as as organizations have dove into trying to be more resilient and try to be more secure in the environment, certainly there were a lot of lessons learned. And one of the big ones is that there should always be in every organization a plan, a governing plan that involves everybody, not just those in the storage, not just those in security, with an occasional meeting to talk about things and hash them out, but an organizational approach to governing this process here as well. So, like I said, you can get too detailed too quickly in this thing, and there's hundreds and thousands and tens of thousands of solutions to dig into, and each one's going to hit different organizations, going to fit different organizations differently. So, the key here is, like I said, not to get too detailed too quickly, to slow down and simplify things, to make things easier to do some of that governing, to do some of the evaluation and review as you go along. Unfortunately, attack cycles aren't like the Olympics. It happens one time every 4 years, or even like the chicken pox, where you get it once and then, oh, thank goodness, I never have to get that again. It's actually, unfortunately become more of a cyclical practice, and something that, every organization just needs to keep getting better at over time. But if you're looking at all these different options, it can be easy to get too detailed too quickly, or too far down one pillar without governing the entirety of that NIST framework. So what do? You want to simplify your resilience. You first, the idea being, put things into certain buckets that you can address over time and assess after every cycle. So there's a visibility bucket that you can get to. What data is the most important, and how should it be protected? And do you know what data do you have and how to protect it? And that's a bucket that you can begin to take some of those programs, of those myriad solutions that are available, and say, okay, what will help me best in my visibility bucket? And then there's the control, the resiliency. How much resilience is in your environment today? Everybody knows now, if you've got data in one place, that's probably too few. You have a single point of failure in there. That's not great. That's not a lot of control over your data, because if you lose that site, if you lose that ability to recover in that area, or to access your data, then what kind of control do you have? How much resilience do you have built into your environment? And then you can go back and say, hey, I've got control. I've got my control bucket and my resilience that I have, which could factor in pure storage here. Building resilience into your equation, hardware resilience. Now you have a bucket to be able to assess and move things forward. Reduction. I'm not talking about being a data protection guy. I'm not talking about deduplication here. Data reduction. What we're talking about is a reduction of resources, reduction of infrastructure. The more spread out you are, the bigger your attack plane is, and you want to work toward being as tight as possible, as resilient as possible in there, and in building in some reduction in there. You have multiple networks, you have multiple silos, you have a lot of different things going on. It makes it harder to defend that broad an area. So one of your buckets could be, hey, are these programs, is this vendor that I'm looking at, is this partner that I'm looking at, helping me in the reduction bucket in here? And you can name these buckets whatever you want, whatever fits your organization. But the idea is to help simplify that. And that way, when you're going, if you're in a role that requires you to bring things up line for approval, because you need to tighten up or add to your resilience, add to your control bucket, it's easier to communicate what things are in that realm. Say, this is for, we did our testing last year. We found that we weren't as resilient in certain areas of our important data as we want to be. we are partnering with Pure Storage, for example, to be more resilient in there, and that's what this that's what this purchase will do. It'll add to our resilience, and we should see faster recovery as an outcome. For an example, there. So if you're on the other side and people are bringing projects upline to you for approval, having things in simple buckets helps in a couple of areas. Obviously, just like I said, it helps to be able to identify and explain and also evaluate whether these purchases, whether these investments in your framework is able to help. It has helped. We went through that. Did our purchases, did our investment in this area of visibility or control, did it accomplish what we wanted it to? Do we need more in there? And so it helps you as an approver be able to understand that. That also gets you away a little bit from acquisition fatigue. And the cyber resiliency, cybersecurity is something that has only grown over time, and in importance, but also in projects. And you can get fatigue very quick from that if it looks scattershot and unorganized, and I'm not really sure. And it makes you, if you're an approver, want to put the brakes on things until you get some semblance of organizational control and accountability and evaluation, governance, as we're talking about in this NIST 2.0 framework. It helps in that regard. And then finally, the area that we're going to dig into a little bit more today, the adapt, recover, and respond. How ready are you for an attack event? How long would it take for you to recover 50%, 75%, 100% of your data center? What are your response strategies in there as well? How often do you review? And that's a bucket that we we like. And that's another thing that's easy to dig into. You want to add things in like clean room. You want to add things in data verification and that end of it that has been built into the 2.0 framework in there. That's a bucket. You say, okay, we're making investments. You've seen the new framework. You're bringing this up to the officers, to the board, maybe, and saying, this is where we're making our investment, and this is how we plan to track it moving forward. So ask the question, well, what is recover, right? And it can be a lot of those things, but to understand kind of what we're looking at today, you got to look back and see, how did we get here? It used to be that governance or recovery was just about, making sure that, an executive had an email they wanted, or somebody in finance had a spreadsheet that you could recover. Those onesie, twosie type recovery. Maybe in a disaster situation, you would be going to another site with a bunch of tapes and determining how to recover our data center in there. And obviously, data center recovery is still a real thing. But we were talking about tape media, and then then you had the durability of tape as an issue. There were always things to focus on in recovery. Media durability, time of recovery, and identifying. If you think back to those times, if you've been around in that, those buckets kind of always sort of existed in there. You always had visibility. What machines what servers were we going to bring back first? Because you never brought them all back. You always identified a top list. That's really all you had time for in those DR scenarios. You weren't thinking about recovering 100% of your data center. Like, okay, we need these, 10 to 25 servers recovered. Well, that's visibility. That is you identifying, the identified tier, what data that you have and how important it is to recover. And then recovery time and bringing back from tape. But back then, when we were using tape as a primary media, we were talking about maybe putting a terabyte or two out there. Now we're talking about petabytes in there, and media wouldn't scale. And as time went on, even moving on from that tape, we were treating disk-like tape because disk was faster and it was getting more accessible. And so we were using that as a target to try to do that. But we were treating disk-like tape in there. Then, the technologies emerged that able to treat disk-like disk with random writes and random reads and not shoe shining on a recovery like you would there. And, ultimately getting into an era where recovery, especially, starting maybe 10 years ago, when we started looking at ransomware and the idea of having to recover everything, the larger data recovering now wasn't about maybe a server or a group of servers. It's about recovering large amounts of data. Like I said, 50, 75, 100% of your data recovery, really became more about, recovering everything. And of course, as time has gone on, we've gone from the smaller footprint to larger footprints. Data's only gotten bigger over time. And so now the RTO, the recovery time objective around these events has grown significantly. And of course, this has coincided with things costing more. The cost of downtime per hour continues to rise and almost double every year. And so, as recovery time goes out, so does that downtime and the cost per downtime. So costs are higher than ever. And so recovery has become critical. We used to focus on optimizing backup copies or optimizing replication, getting things offsite. And of course, that's still important, building that resiliency in, but recovery and recovery time, how quickly you can get back up has become critical. And now, it's even more than that now. How quickly can you resume business? And that builds in a lot of the stuff around the governance, where you talk about just recovering your data is part of it, and a huge part of it, no question about it. But there's also business operations. There's also process that's involved before you can even move the first bit of data back. How tuned in are your executives? Who can make the proper call at the right time in a timely manner, and avoid a day or 2 days or many days of waiting to make the right call on how to recover there. And then, doing testing procedures and mitigating the effects of a cybersecurity event. This is where, getting clean room methodology and restoring data. How do I know it's clean? How can I evaluate? How often am I doing tests? How often am I verifying the places that I'm putting my copies of data, or even my primary data? How often am I sure that this stuff is protected? Identifying those critical channels and alternate facilities, all those things that we did 25 years ago, but are even more critical today and involve more people. And this is what we're talking about, the governance, having your board involved, once every 2 years, maybe it's every year, but certainly having tabletop sessions and walking through and war planning these events are very critical. And again, the part of the restore that's new in 2.0, the integrity of the backup of the assets being verified in there. And there's a critical piece to this that you can put it on paper. Yes, we have to verify, but what goes into that in there? And so you're building out, we talk about the control and we talk about resilience. At Pure Storage, we help customers right out of the box get resilience built in to their systems, whether it's, at the data center in tier 1, where you're sitting in your data center, and from the time the data is born, right as it's born, it's data, and you want to put it, you want to swaddle it, keep it warm, keep it safe. And there, Pure Storage helps by, generating snapshots and protection groups, and then protecting those with something called safe mode. And that, creates an off gap where you can't manually eradicate or change, schedule, and protects that data right from the time that's born. You identified it, you use your you use your visibility, and you said, all right, this is the data that's important, and this is the scheduling we need to do right out of the box. Even in a tier 1, in a tiered resiliency architecture scenario, you're able to protect it. But then, now one of the subcultures of ransomware and planning is the notion of cyber insurance. Because it's an event, you want to get some insurance to help offset some of those downtime charges, because recovery time has gone out, cost per downtime's come out. We have cyber insurance to protect us in an event. Well, what happens now, if you have an event and you have something on on tier 1 right there, and it's on the array and it's attacked, you may think, okay, I'm just going to recover from one of those my snapshots are safe because they're protected by safe mode. Well, hold on. There might be a need to have an adjuster, or if it's a federal kind of case, maybe the FBI needs to come in. At any rate, maybe police tape goes around that array and says, don't touch anything. We want to make sure everything's on the up and up. We can identify what happened, what went wrong. Well, what do you do? So this is a great idea to build in some resiliency. Make a second copy, send it over to a second site, like you see. Send it over to a second site, and maybe you can work off that array in the meantime, and recover the snapshot, get back up and running again, get that part of that recovery cycle. Now, how quickly can I resume my business operation and take it from there? And then, even in a situation where you're copying the data to the second site or replicating a snapshot, you can, at that point, you can continue to that, and you can protect those also with safe mode in there as well, and just recover from there. So, and then you have your third tier out there. Well, we'll take second tier real quick. Also, you can have high availability built in, or near, zero RPO, near zero RPO built in, and you can take advantage of a second site there too. And then you have your third tier, which is the traditional, 24-hour period of streaming backup, and you're kind of your last line of defense, where you go when you're really pouring back all that data at scale. You have it there, and then you have your data bunker. Now, this doesn't always have to be 4 different sites. A lot of these can be bundled together, but from a logical standpoint, you have these different tiers in your data bunker, where maybe that could be the cloud, or it could be tape, or it could be disk or flash sitting out somewhere in there. But that's how a tiered architecture works. Right out of the box at Pure Storage, we're able to provide that with protection and security for you there as well. And different things, like it's different data is going to require different protection. You may need the zero RPO of an active cluster, highly available pod there, or an active DR, which is near synchronous and has a little more latency resiliency built into that. Obviously taking local snapshots and then protecting them with safe mode there, or maybe it's just simple asynchronous replication site to site. We have a service, DR as a service also, that helps you with your VMware. So maybe you want to spin up a VM recovery in the cloud, an automated failover in there. We have a DR as a service that helps protect with that. And of course, your streaming backup and recovery, leveraging, your data control plane, and, leveraging it, obviously with Pure Storage, we're going to bring more to bear with our partners in that area. And you say, well, how can you help? How can you work with, any of these data control plane partners? Well, there's a couple ways. Some of these partners have very good independent snapshot management methodology. So it fits into your resiliency game plan as you're building it in. Part of your recovery game plan is to build more resiliency, more control into your equation. Say some of these data control planes do a great job of independent snap management, orchestration, and granular recoveries based off of the great snapshot technology. So you can begin to from a Pure Storage standpoint, that's Pure as a source, and it can integrate and orchestrate and manage snapshots across multiple sites. We have some softwares can do are active cluster aware, so you have the high availability, be able to orchestrate that and orchestrate an async copy to a third site if you have kind of that strategy in there. So there's ways to be able to do that right out of the box from as a source. But what about as a target? What am I writing to? How important is that? Well, it's critical. Where this data control plane is writing data down to is critical. And why is that? Because as the footprint has grown, and we're talking petabytes footprint sometimes out there, or even if you're just talking about a petabyte or a little less than that, that recovery time objective has gone out. And like I said, with RTO growing out and cost per downtime growing out, what you write to is critical, because it's not the writes that are time critical on there. It's reading the data back. How fast can I read data on here? And, as we look back 30 years ago, and we're talking about tape technology or even disk, there was always a restore tax to pay for what we do. And then when we added deduplication to shrink the footprint out there so we didn't have to buy as much storage, there was a tax to pay reading that data out. And this is how Pure Storage got brought into the equation. Why would I ever think 5 years ago that all flash would have a place in this ecosystem? And when you would think about it, well, it does make sense now, because reads have become more important than writes in a disaster, in a ransomware, in a cyber resiliency, cyber security scenario. Reading the data at scale has become essential. It is an essential checkbox to your planning in there, that recovery pillar of the NIST framework. Critical. So how fast you can recover has brought Pure Storage into the equation. It's where Rapid Restore was born. We had a customer that was, their database farm was taking 38 hours to recover, and it was untenable. They couldn't do that. The cost for that 38 hours was critical 5 years ago, much less today. And by putting an all-flash system in place with Pure Storage, they were able to reduce that 38 to a comical half hour. Sounds marketing thing, but it was real impact. And it did it in such a density that they reduced cooling costs and heating costs, all of that we all have projects that involve reducing all energy, reducing that. So to be able to address this recovery with something that was able to help across the board, the Rapid Restore use case was born at Pure Storage. So we work with our partners to provide that level of fast recovery that their current customers writing to legacy architecture, to disk drives, couldn't keep up with. And as data has continued to grow, that problem has just gotten worse and worse over there. Even the purpose-built backup appliances that exist in the ecosystem, which are so great for optimizing backup, they are not helping in the fight of recovery. They're not helping address the restore pillar of that NIST framework. And so, customers have continually turned for faster solutions in regards to recovery. And we're able to deliver that with our partners there. And so, and one thing that each of these partners are putting in, and what really everybody's doing right now, when we talk about clean room, when we talk about all those things that go into verifying data, all of those are read events. All of those require a performant target to do reading. If you are using legacy architecture, if you look at a design and it doesn't include how fast you can read that data, you're buying into a system that's only going to exacerbate. It's only going to stretch that RTO out even further, because those processes are going to take a long time to drive. It checks a box. It may check a box, but the box it's not checking is the most critical one that we identified in that recover pillar of the NIST 2.0 framework, which is how quickly can I get my business back up and running. It's a critical piece, folks. And so, recovery is critical. Everything that our data control plane partners are putting into their software, everything that everybody's doing out there requires fast read. You have to have it. It's got to be in there. So pay attention to that as you go planning for your next bucket purchase in the adapt, respond, and recover bucket, because it is critical to address that. Don't put yourself in a position where all these things that you have to do to address these new technologies, these new guidances around there, and then find yourself stuck for 2 or 3 years because you didn't plan on that piece of it falling down and not working like it needs to, not just today, but in 3 years. You need a predictable platform for performance in there. And of course, I'm going to tell you that Pure Storage provides that. Would love to talk to you about it and love to identify what that is. And so what you're left with is this defense in depth, and being able to address defense across the entire continuum of resiliency. Each place along the way with different levels, obviously, for data, but you have to have something that you're going to be able to reduce your attack plane, be protected, be safe. And with Pure, that's being able to protect it with performance, but also with safe mode, being able to address it and creating an authorization gap. And so you can't manually eradicate data sets, whether Pure is a source or Pure is a target, being able to protect it, object lock methodology. And even with when you're writing to object, there's different attack vectors there too. Here at Pure, when we talk about object protection, object lock API is important one, but also there's attack vectors of overwrite that we protect with freeze locked objects, and also protecting the bucket itself from deletion and manual eradication. And we protect that with safe mode also. So there's no denial of service attack. I know there's so much to think about, and but it is critical to have these discussions, whether you talk, whether you're with Pure Storage or you're thinking about it, or you're not with Pure Storage. Please think about these things as you go on. You want good defense in depth, and this will help you as you cycle through. The faster you can address these things, and you have your forensics reading off something fast. I'm telling you, it's all fast reading. You're able to shrink those attack cycles down. You're able to get hardened faster, and you're able to recover quicker. It all feeds itself. But the longer things stay mushy, the longer you don't have your arms around it in a proper governance perspective and 2.0, and the worse your recovery planning is, the harder it's going to be to recover from attack. It's going to be harder to improve moving forward. Those tabletops with your executive session, when you're reviewing what you've invested in and how you're approaching these things, doesn't go as well as when you do have a solid game plan going there. And that's it. That's the approach. So again, if I'm going to summarize here, I'm going to say, simplify, be familiar with your NIST 2.0 framework, understand the pillars that are involved, simplify by putting things in logical buckets in there. You don't have to use mine. You don't have to use it in there, but something, around visibility, control, reducing that attack plane, and then your ability to adapt, respond, and recover. For me, those are the way I think about it. For you, maybe a little different. I'd love to have a conversation and talk about it sometime. So thank you all for listening. Thanks for participating in this event. And we hope that you'll be talking to Pure Storage soon. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Jason. Great stuff as always. Didn't I tell you he was excellent? So unfortunately, though, I do have to say that Jason will not be available to take questions today, but Pure Storage and Jason will be following up with all of you who submitted questions. So that about does it for the event today, folks. Whoa, sorry, I got ahead of myself a little bit here. Okay, but forgot one of the most important parts. Before we wrap this up, we do have one more piece of business. We need to make one of you $250 richer. As I mentioned at the beginning here, you do have to be present for the entire event to be eligible to win the Amazon gift card. And we do have a winner for today. And that winner is Anna Mumford from Connecticut. Congratulations to you, Anna. We will be in touch to get you your card ASAP. And with that, everyone, on behalf of the Actual Tech Media team, I want to thank Jason and Pure Storage for making this event possible. And thanks as always to you attendees for being with us, for your great questions and interest in the topic. That's a wrap for me today, folks. I'll see you in the next one. Have a great rest of your day.